Tonight's top EU stories from the unit website include: the EU must halve emissions by 2030. European Union funds for an aviation park and digital hub. And the EU battery collection target is too ambitious. MEP calls for pan-European referendum on new EU treaty. Plus, European Union's Olli Rehn says Europe must press ahead with economic reforms. I'm Rick Timmis, and this is the Unit Nightly News. First, from our homepage, the European Union should set an ambitious goal to halve emissions from 1990 to 2030 in order to help build confidence among businesses and other countries that is serious about limiting climate change risks. Lord Stern, former World Bank chief economist and author of the landmark 2006 report on the costs of climate change, also said setting a strong carbon reduction target was more pressing for the EU than specific technology targets for renewable energy and energy efficiency. This creates a huge conundrum for us here in the UK. As I reported yesterday, the UK is facing the possibility of blackouts because there is a lack of capacity from the power stations attached to the national grid. The coal-fired power stations should be in the process of decommissioning because they breach EU emissions targets. The concerns over nuclear power are well publicised. As yesterday's article pointed out, the government knows about this, but it appears to be ignoring the issue, whilst instead it's ploughing ahead with HS2. So why so little action? Perhaps it's because the government no longer owns the power companies. They were sold off under the Thatcher privatisation schemes. The power stations are now owned by France, Germany and the USA. We don't have a domestic power generation capability because our government sold it right under your noses, just exactly the same way as it has done with the postal services. I stand in disbelief watching folks clamour to buy post office shares. What madness! They're rushing out to buy what they already own. €8 million from the European Regional Development Fund are to be allocated for the further development of the aviation park and for the development of a digital hub at the Life Science Park in San Juan. Parliamentary Secretary Ian Borg said €3.6 million would be used in the Safi Aviation Park to improve the basic infrastructure, namely the taxiway, aprons and service infrastructure. Through this project, 3 new hangars would be built in order to create a new space for the establishment of maintenance, repairs and overhaul facilities for small jets. The digital hub at the Life Science Park would absorb €4.4 million. This would be designed and developed in order to contribute towards creative sectors. It will also create the environment and the right structures for training and monitoring of new enterprises. So, my friends in Greece, remember when you recover from your economic meltdown and you're looking for somewhere to go on vacation, Malta has a nice shiny aviation park and digital hub, all paid for with a chunk of your taxes. Achievement of a 45% battery collection rate by 2016 will remain a challenge for most EU member states, according to the European Portable Battery Association, the EPBA. The organisation predicts that only a dozen countries will be able to realise the target, saying success will depend on clarification of the definition of portable battery, as well as collection schemes and operational performance. And when I read this, I thought, you're kidding me, right? This is like passports for Dartmoor ponies or electronic tagging for Welsh mountain sheep. It's insane. So, let's take a look at this EPBA and follow the money. The EPBA is an industry think tank which has lobbied battery manufacturers to join. It's Duracell, Sony, Varta. There is a big list on their website. It's effectively an EU badge. Well, then you realise that each country then has its own battery association. So in the UK, it is the British Battery Manufacturers Association. OK, so who's behind that organisation then? Well, the contact is a Mrs. Anya Swirsky of College Hill, London, EC3N4QN. A little further digging reveals their website domain name is registered to College Group Limited of London EC3N4QN. Right, now we're getting somewhere. And what, pray, you ask, do the College Group Limited do? Well, they're a PR, marketing and lobbying consultancy, and I quote from their website. We have assembled our group of complementary practices to support our clients in their dealings with their principal stakeholders in business, the people who invest in companies, the media who write about them, and analysts who form opinion on valuations, the politicians and regulators responsible for the rules of the game, and their employees. So folks, what is there left to say apart from, what a load of old tosh? The EU has taken your cash and flushed it on a lobby group, all in the name of the environment, which, as you can see from the opening release, has largely failed. So remember, the next time the BBC puts some talking head from the business community on camera to say the CBI has no appetite for a UK outside the EU, remember to check out who exactly they asked in their surveys. A pan-European referendum on a new treaty is needed if the EU is to convince its citizens of its transparency, accountability and democratic legitimacy, says Christian Engstrom. Britain will have its own in-out referendum in 2017, unless the EU wants to run the risk of a major member state actually leaving. It has until 2017 to transform itself into something attractive enough to make Brits want to stay of their own free will. This will be a major task, but it can be done, and it needs to be done. The EU needs a new basic treaty to replace the constitutional mess we have today. The Lisbon Treaty has not yet been in operation for 2 years, but there is a universal consensus that it will have to be revised as soon as possible. Although there are very different views on how it should be revised, everybody agrees that what we have is simply not good enough. So, here it is, folks, on record, categoric admission that the reason why the UK referendum is on hold until 2017 is to give enough time for the EU government to change the wider public perception. They know that the people in Britain have had enough of this nonsense. Chairman Cameron simply cannot and will not allow the question to be asked because he'd disappoint his political masters when his British serfs tell him where he can stuff the EU. Here we are again, my friends. They are lying to us. Mr. Adam Afrayi intends to table an amendment in November to bring forward a referendum to 2014. My prediction is that Chairman Cameron will crush that rebellion in swift dictatorial style. The European Union's chief economic policymaker on Monday said German Chancellor Angela Merkel's strong showing in her country's elections on Sunday demonstrated that Germany's push for economic reforms across the Eurozone will continue, something that is critical to the region's health. Germany is Europe's biggest economy and has exercised a great deal of muscle in trying to guide the Eurozone through the financial crisis and a recession that continues to grip much of the region, particularly some of the southern countries. It is now essential that we maintain the momentum on building a banking union, and in the member states that we not allow any room for complacency but stay on the reform course. This is a load of old kleptocrat rhetoric from the mouth of another bankster puppet. The people across Europe do not need a banking union. That is not going to solve these economic problems. The problems are because of the banks, not in spite of them. Look, every cent, euro and pound that exists in the market space is loaned into existence. The government borrows the money from the banks at interest. So you see that whilst that continues to be the case, the governments and therefore the people will never be out of debt. They will always be in hock to the bank, whether there is a central banking union or not. In fact, the centralisation of the banking system is the wrong thing to do because it will hand even more power and control to the banks, who were the imbeciles that gambled all our cash on bad investments, lost the lot and then blamed us. Today in our video library, this is one of the simplest and best documentaries that I have seen to date on the economic structures in place today. It explains how the money works, where it comes from, who controls it, and what the impact of that control is. It investigates the influence the bankers have brought to bear on governments and economies over the last 1,000 years, and highlights the brave leaders who have stood against the banks in favour of treasury, government or sovereign money issue, and the weak and inept that have relinquished that control. Deceit, assassination, manipulation, political control have all been used to draw economic power to the world banking system. Well, here in the UK, we have much responsibility also, and our leaders and governments have played out many dirty tricks over the centuries. But the bottom line is this video educates about what money is, explaining fiat, asset-backed and gold standards. The economic collapse is a charade, a game of theatre, a poker hand played by the banks, bluffed into existence by the media, and its true purpose is control. As you will see in this video, inflation and deflation are not symptoms of a problem, they are mechanisms of monetary supply, used with great effectiveness to inflate asset bubbles, encourage debt to buy assets that create a notional sense of value, and then deflate currency values, which enables the banking system to strip away the wealth of the people. Now, I stand to be challenged on such bold statements, but I believe that I have researched and read enough about the economic history of the last 1,000 years to hold my own in any such argument. But please do let me know what your thoughts are. Can you prove that what I have said, or what this documentary shows, is wrong? I'm Rick Timmis, reporting for the Unit Nightly News. I'll see you soon.